They gave me 48 hours to pack my bags.
The HOA president stood on my sidewalk, smiling, already planning who she'd sell my home to. She thought she had won.
But she made one mistake. She didn't check the archives from 20 years ago.
I didn't just save my house. By the time I was done with them, the HOA was bankrupt, the president was selling her car to pay me.
It started on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because that's the day I always took the trash out before work. The sun wasn't even fully up yet. The air was cold. It was quiet. It was the kind of morning where you think everything is fine. I walked down my driveway, coffee in hand, and that's when I saw it. A bright orange sticker slapped right on the driver's side window of my truck. It wasn't a flyer for a lawn service. It was heavy, sticky. I peeled it off. It left that nasty white residue that takes an hour to scrub away. It was a violation notice from the Oak Creek Homeowners Association. Article 6, Section 2, parking of commercial vehicles prohibited in driveways. I stared at it. I laughed. I literally laughed out loud in my driveway. I drive a Ford F-150. It's my daily driver. Yes, I work in construction management. Yes, I have a toolbox in the back. But a commercial vehicle? It wasn't a dump truck. It wasn't a delivery van with logos painted on the side. It was just a truck. I threw the notice in the trash can and went to work. I thought it was a mistake. I thought someone knew I was on a patrol committee and got a little trigger happy. That was my first mistake. I underestimated who I was dealing with. 3 days later, I got the letter. It wasn't a friendly warning. It was a fine, $250. I called the number on the letterhead. I expected to get a property management company. Instead, I got Patricia. Now, every neighborhood has a Patricia. She was the board president. She was retired. She was bored. And she was miserable. Her entire life revolved around the 3 streets that made up our subdivision. Hello, this is Patricia. Hi, Patricia. This is Mark from 402. I think there's been a mistake. I got a fine for my truck? There's no mistake, Mark, she said. Her voice was ice cold. Your truck has a rack on the back. That classifies as work equipment. It's an eyesore. We're trying to maintain property values here. Patricia, half the guys in this neighborhood drive trucks. It's Texas. Well, they park them in their garages. You should too. I can't. My garage is full of woodworking tools. It's my shop. That sounds like a you problem, Mark. Pay the fine. Move the truck. She hung up, just like that. I was angry, but I wasn't scared. Not yet. I decided to be stubborn. I kept parking in my driveway. I figured they would get tired of stickering my window. They didn't get tired. Every morning, 6 a.m., a new orange sticker, a new $250 fine. After 2 weeks, I did the math. I owed them $3,500. I wrote them a letter. I explained that the rule was vague. I asked for a hearing. They ignored the letter. They just sent another invoice. The fines doubled because they were repeat offenses. Now it was $500 a day. I tried to be smart. I started parking on the street in front of my house. Technically public property. The next morning, my truck was gone. I stood in my driveway, panic rising in my chest. I thought it was stolen. I called the police. No, sir, the dispatcher said. It wasn't stolen. It was towed by private order of the HOA. I had to pay $600 to get my truck out of the impound lot. When I got home, there was a letter taped to my front door. Parking on the street is a violation of community safety standards. Section 8, paragraph 4. I walked into my kitchen and sat down. My hands were shaking. This wasn't a dispute anymore. This was a war. And I was losing. I tried to rally the neighbors. I went door to door. Hey, can you believe what Patricia's doing? Yeah, it's awful, they would say. They would nod. They would look sympathetic. But then they would look down at their shoes. But you know, Mark, we don't want to get on her bad side. She fined the Johnsons for having the wrong shade of mulch last year. We just want to keep our heads down. Cowards. All of them. They were terrified of a 60-year-old woman with a clipboard. Months passed. The fines kept coming. I stopped opening the envelopes. I just threw them in a drawer. I was in denial. I told myself, they can't actually collect this. It's not real debt. It's fake HOA money. Then the certified letter came. You know the one. You have to sign for it. The mailman looks at you with pity in his eyes because he knows what he's handing you. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it. The paper was thick. Legal stock. Notice of intent to foreclose. I read it 3 times. My brain refused to process the words. Total amount due, $52,400. Includes unpaid assessments, interest, administrative fees, and legal costs. $52,000. The letter said I had 30 days to pay the full amount. If I didn't, the HOA would exercise its right to place a lien on my property and auction my house to satisfy the debt. I looked around my kitchen. I looked at the height chart we had penciled on the wall for my daughter. I looked at the deck I had built with my own hands last summer. They were going to take it. They were going to take my home over a pickup truck. I felt sick, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. That night, I told my wife. She cried. She didn't scream. She just cried. That was worse. Mark, what are we going to do? We don't have $50,000. I'll fix it, I said, but my voice sounded hollow. I didn't know how to fix it. I called a lawyer the next day, a real estate specialist. I told him everything. I expected him to say, "This is illegal, we'll sue them." Instead, he sighed. "Look, Mark, I've seen this 100 times. Texas property code gives HOAs incredible power. If the rules are in the CC and RS, and you violated them, and they follow the notification process, they can take the house. I can fight it, but I'll need a $10,000 retainer up front, and we might still lose." I hung up the phone. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was alone. The law was against me. The neighbors were hiding. My bank account was empty, and Patricia was sitting in her house, 3 doors down, probably drinking tea and planning her victory lap. I felt something change inside me in that moment. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't fear. It was pure, cold hatred. I wiped my face. I started the truck. "Okay," I said to the empty cab. "You want to play the rules game? Let's play the rules game." I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment Patricia lost everything. She pushed me into a corner where I had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous enemy you can make. I couldn't sleep. For 3 nights, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning in the dark. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that for sale sign on my lawn. We had 27 days left. My wife, Sarah, was trying to hold it together, but I could see her packing boxes in her head. She stopped buying groceries. "We need to save every penny," she said. "Maybe we can rent an apartment across town." "We are not renting an apartment." I snapped. I didn't mean to be harsh, but the thought of letting them win made my blood boil. I couldn't afford the lawyer. That $10,000 retainer was money we needed for moving costs if the worst happened. So I decided I would have to be my own lawyer. I took a week off work. I told my boss I had a family emergency. He didn't ask questions. I turned my dining room into a war room. I had stacks of paper everywhere. I printed out every email I had ever sent the HOA. I printed every invoice. I printed the entire Texas property code regarding homeowners associations. Chapter 209. I read it until my eyes bled. I was looking for a technicality. Maybe they sent the notice 1 day late. Maybe the font size on the lien was too small. I found nothing. They were thorough. Patricia's lawyer was expensive, and he was good. They crossed every T and dotted every I. By day 4, I was crashing. I was running on caffeine and spite, and the spite was running low. I sat there, head in my hands, surrounded by failure. "It's over," I whispered. I started organizing the papers to throw them away. I picked up the original copy of the neighborhood covenants, the CC and RS, the constitution of our neighborhood. It was old. The paper was yellowed. It was dated September 12, 1998. I flipped through it one last time. Article 1, definitions. Article 2, property rights. Article 3, assessments. Boring. Standard. Ironclad. Then I got to the back. The last page. The signature page. It was signed by the original developer, Oak Creek Development, LLC. I stared at it. I don't know why, but a thought popped into my head. Not a legal thought, just a curiosity. Who is Oak Creek Development, LLC? I opened my laptop. I went to the Secretary of State's website. I searched for the business entity. Oak Creek Development, LLC status. Inactive. Forfeited existence 2004. Okay, that made sense. The developer built the neighborhood, sold the houses, and then closed the company. That's normal. But then I had another thought. If the developer created the HOA, there had to be a handover. At some point, the developer hands the corporation over to the homeowners. I searched for the Oak Creek Homeowners Association in the business registry. There it was. Filing date, 1998. I clicked on filing history. 1998. Formation. 2002. Periodic report. 2006. Periodic report. Then, a gap. 2010. Involuntary dissolution. Tax forfeiture. My heart stopped. I leaned closer to the screen. In Texas, like many states, nonprofit corporations, which HOAs are, have to file a report every 4 years to let the state know they still exist. They have to pay a small fee. It's like $50. If you don't do it, the state assumes you are dead. They dissolve your corporation. I looked at the dates. In 2010, the HOA failed to file. The state dissolved them. But wait, there was more. 2014, reinstatement. My heart sank. They fixed it. They realized their mistake 4 years later and paid the back taxes. I kept scrolling. 2018, involuntary dissolution, tax forfeiture. They did it again. Patricia took over as president in 2017. She was so busy measuring grass and towing trucks that she forgot to file the paperwork to tell the government the HOA existed. I looked for a reinstatement filing. There wasn't one. I refreshed the page. I checked the spelling. I checked the tax ID number. Status, forfeited. Right to transact business. Suspended. I sat back in my chair. The room was silent, but my ears were ringing. According to the state of Texas, the Oak Creek Homeowners Association did not legally exist. It had been a ghost entity for 6 years. I grabbed the Texas tax code. Section 171, 252. If the corporate privileges of a corporation are forfeited, the corporation shall be denied the right to sue or defend in a court of the state. They couldn't sue me. They couldn't foreclose on me. They didn't have the right to stand in a courtroom. But that wasn't the best part. I kept reading. Section 171. 255. This was the atomic bomb. If the corporate privileges of a corporation are forfeited, each director or officer of the corporation is liable for a debt of the corporation as if the debt were created or incurred by the director or officer as a partner in a partnership. I read it 5 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. If the corporation is dead, the corporate veil is gone. The liability protection is gone. This meant that every time Patricia signed a contract with a towing company, she wasn't signing for the HOA. She was signing for herself. Every time she collected dues from the neighbors, she wasn't putting it into a protected nonprofit account. She was putting it into a slush fund that she was personally responsible for. And the foreclosure lawsuit, the one they filed against me, they filed it under the name of a dead corporation. That is fraud on the court. And because they filed a fraudulent lawsuit, they were liable for damages. But since the HOA didn't exist, the HOA couldn't pay the damages. So who pays? Each director or officer. Patricia. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. I felt like I had just snorted a line of pure electricity. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was holding a royal flush, and they were betting their life savings on a pair of twos. I could have called my lawyer right then. I could have run over Patricia's house and screamed in her face, but I didn't. I remembered how she laughed at me. I remembered the tow truck dragging my pickup away. I remember my wife crying in the kitchen. Simply winning wasn't enough. I needed to destroy them. I needed to make sure they could never hurt anyone in this neighborhood ever again. I needed to set a trap. I printed the documents from the Secretary of State. I put them in a crisp manila folder. I labeled at the end. I went to bed, and for the first time in months, I slept like a baby. The foreclosure hearing was set for a Friday. But before the court date, there was the monthly HOA board meeting. Usually, nobody goes to these meetings. It's just Patricia and her 3 cronies, Bill, Nancy, and some guy named Todd who always asleep, sitting in the community center basement, complaining about teenagers skateboarding on the sidewalks. This time, I made sure people showed up. I didn't tell them the secret. I just put flyers on every mailbox. HOA planning to foreclose on neighbor. Come see the show. Tuesday, 7 p.m. I wanted witnesses. When I walked into the community center, the room was packed. There were probably 50 neighbors there. The air was thick with tension. People were whispering. They looked at me like I was a dead man walking. Patricia sat at the head table. She had her gavel. She looked annoyed that so many people were there. But she also looked smug. She knew about the foreclosure. She knew she had me. All right, settle down. She banged the gavel. We have a full agenda tonight. First, the landscaping budget. I stood up. I'd like to make a statement, I said. Patricia sighed. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Mark, this is a business meeting. You are currently not a member in good standing. You have significant outstanding debts. You don't have the floor. It's about the debt, I said, walking to the front. I want to address the board regarding the $52,000 lien on my home. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. $50,000. The neighbors looked at each other, shocked. They didn't know it was that high. Patricia smiled. It was a cruel, thin smile. Very well. If you want to embarrass yourself in public, go ahead. You have 2 minutes. I stood in front of the table. I looked at Bill. I looked at Nancy. I looked at Todd. And finally I looked at Patricia. Patricia, I said calmly, I'm giving you one chance. Drop the fines. Remove the lien. Apologize for towing my truck. If you do that right now, I walk away. Patricia laughed. She actually chuckled. You're in no position to make demands, Mark. You broke the rules. You ignored the warnings. Now you pay the price. We will see you in court on Friday, and we will take your house. It's already in motion. So you are speaking officially? I asked, as the president of the Oak Creek HOA. Of course I am. And you, Bill? You support this lawsuit? You authorize the funds to hire the lawyer? Bill puffed out his chest. Absolutely. Rules are rules. And you, Nancy? Yes, she squeaked. Okay, I said. I just wanted to get you all on the record. I pulled the manila folder out of my bag. I didn't open it yet. I just placed it on the table in front of Patricia. Patricia, do you know what administrative dissolution means? She frowned. I'm not here for a vocabulary lesson. It means, I said, raising my voice so the back of the room could hear, that when you fail to pay your state franchise taxes for 6 years, the state shuts you down. I opened the folder. I slid the first document toward her, the certification of forfeiture from the Secretary of State. This document says that the Oak Creek Homeowners Association ceased to exist as a legal entity in 2018. Patricia looked at the paper. She squinted. This is just paperwork. A clerical error. Is it? I slid the next paper. The Texas tax code. Because according to the law, since the HOA doesn't exist, it cannot enforce rules. It cannot levy fines. And it certainly cannot file a lawsuit. The room started to buzz. I saw Bill lean over and look at the paper. His face went pale. But here's the problem for you, Patricia. I continued, leaning in close. You've been collecting dues for 6 years. You've been paying yourself a management stipend for 6 years. You've been paying a lawyer to sue me. You've been spending money that belongs to a corporation that doesn't exist. That's not true, Patricia stammered. Her hand was shaking. And since you signed the checks, I said, dropping the final bomb, and since you authorized a lawsuit, you aren't protected by the corporation. You pierced the veil, Patricia. You and Bill and Nancy and Todd. I turned to the audience. They are personally liable. That $50,000 you're trying to squeeze out of me, I'm countersuing. For fraud, for harassment, for theft. And since the HOA has no assets, I'm coming for your personal assets. I pointed at Patricia. I'm coming for your rental property. I pointed at Bill. I'm coming for your boat. This meeting is adjourned. Patricia screamed. She slammed the gavel so hard the head flew off and skittered across the floor. You can't adjourn it, I said, smiling, because you aren't the president. You're just a lady sitting at a table in a basement. Pandemonium broke out. The neighbors were shouting. People were demanding to know where their dues money went. Bill looked like he was having a heart attack. Patricia stood up, grabbed her purse, and tried to push past me. I stepped aside and let her go. See you in court on Friday, I said. She didn't look back, but I saw the fear in her eyes. It was the same fear I had felt when I got the foreclosure notice. The predator had just become the prey. Friday morning, the courtroom. Usually civil court is boring, but word had spread. Half the neighborhood took the day off work to sit in the gallery. They wanted to see the bloodbath. Patricia was there with her expensive lawyer. He looked annoyed. I don't think she told him everything. She probably told him I was bluffing. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't need one. I represented myself. Pro se. The judge was an older man, Judge Harrison. He looked over his glasses at the files. All right, the judge said, case number 49202. Oak Creek HOA versus Mark Reynolds. Plaintiff seeks foreclosure for unpaid assessments. Defendant has filed a countersuit for, well, everything under the sun. The judge looked at Patricia's lawyer. Counsel, proceed. The lawyer stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He started his rehearsed speech. Your Honor, Mr. Reynolds has blatantly disregarded the community covenants. He owes over $50,000. We have the invoices. We have the liens. This is an open and shut case of non-payment. The judge nodded. He looked at me. Mr. Reynolds, your defense? I stood up. My hands weren't shaking this time. Your Honor, I move to dismiss the plaintiff's case with prejudice on the grounds that the plaintiff does not exist. The lawyer scoffed. Objection. Frivolous. I have the evidence here, I said. I handed the bailiff the certified copies from the Secretary of State. The bailiff handed them to the judge. The judge put on his reading glasses. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. The judge read the first page. He flipped to the second page. He paused. He frowned. He looked up at Patricia's lawyer. Counsel, the judge said. His voice was very quiet. Are you aware of the standing of your client? Of course, Your Honor. They're a registered nonprofit. No, the judge interrupted. They were a registered nonprofit. As of 2018, their charter was forfeited for tax evasion. Patricia's lawyer froze. He looked at Patricia. Patricia was staring at the table. I was not aware of that, Your Honor, the lawyer stammered. Well, you should be. The judge snapped. Because you just filed a foreclosure suit on behalf of a ghost. The judge turned to me. Mr. Reynolds, proceed with your countersuit arguments. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. Since the board members acted without a corporate charter, they committed fraud. They extorted money from me. They stole my truck illegally. I am suing for damages, emotional distress, and legal costs. And I am holding the board members jointly and severally liable under Texas Tax Code Section 171. 255. The judge looked at the statute. He nodded. The law is clear. The judge said, corporate protection is a privilege, not a right. If you don't follow the rules of the state, you don't get the protection. He banged his gavel. The plaintiff's case is dismissed. The foreclosure is void. The lien is stripped from the property immediately. The gallery erupted. People cheered. The bailiff had to yell for order. As for the countersuit, the judge continued. I find in favor of the defendant. The actions of this board were egregious. Harassment, illegal towing, fraudulent billing. He looked at Patricia. She was shrinking in her seat. I am awarding Mr. Reynolds damages in the amount of $150,000. Judgment is entered against Patricia Miller, William Davis, and Nancy Smith personally. Patricia burst into tears. Bill put his head on the table. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Because the judgment was personal, I didn't have to wait for the HOA to bake sales. I sent the sheriff to their houses. We garnished Bill's wages. He had to delay his retirement by 5 years. Nancy had to refinance her home to pay her share. But Patricia got the worst of it. She didn't have the cash. I placed a lien on her rental property, a little duplex she owned across town. She tried to fight it, but the judgment was solid. 3 months later, the sheriff seized the rental property and put up for auction to satisfy the debt. I didn't buy it. I didn't want her property. I just wanted my money. When the check cleared, I paid off my truck. I put the rest in my daughter's college fund. The Oak Creek HOA was officially dissolved. We never formed a new one. The neighborhood is different now. Yeah, some people paint their houses weird colors. One guy has a boat in his driveway. The grass is a little longer in some yards. But people talk to each other now. We have block parties. We don't walk to our mailboxes in fear. A few months after the court case, I was washing my truck in the driveway, a Ford F-150, commercial rack on the back. I saw Patricia walking her dog. She looked older, tired. She didn't have her clipboard. She looked at me. I stopped washing. I looked right back at her. She looked down and walked away. I smiled, grabbed the hose, and sprayed the mud off my tires. It was a beautiful day, and my driveway was mine again.